Good evening. Once again, we return to the story of Caius, Dunmer, Spellsword, Eternal Champion, agent of the Emperor of Tamriel, and currently in a bookstore trying to figure out what the next item to buy is. It is the first of Rain's Hand, so I believe we have just a little over a week before we can do our next summoning. So for now, we will see if we can find anything new for our inventory and then move on. At the moment, I'm just looking for copies of books that I don't already have a copy of. Now it looks like King Edward Volume 9. But I think we're on that rather than don't own it. Interesting. So we have part 10 but not 9. And if we can find at 11 is good as well.
Bargain Bookstore prides itself on having the lowest prices in Daggerfall. Though you have bargained with me until the sun is low in the sky, I can sell for no less than 276 gold pieces.
Now, one detail I thought of while I was in between the last session, I think I have a way of using the time while we're waiting for a summon. Other than reading, of course. Wrong books. Not quite what I meant to do, but fair enough. Alright, so we still have enough cash, which is good. So we will head to the palace to see if we can get some work. Now, the reason I didn't do this earlier was I was concerned that the time it would take me to perform the task would be longer than 8 days. But I suspect we're going to have a way of getting where we need to go in time.
All are free to petition His Highness at this time. Do not stray from the audience chamber, lest ye have royal blessing to do so. Always speak politely to the king and queen, and above all, cast no spells while within these walls. Do ye agree with these terms?
Just want a job. Alright, so the worry that I have is if if I go to the Mages Guild, it's likely that they're gonna send me to a dungeon. That's not exactly what I want to do. So let's see if some of the stores have a task. Now I have the whole set.
Daggerfall's best equipment store prides itself on having the lowest prices in Daggerfall. Though you have bargained with me until the sun is low in the sky, I can sell it for no less than 235 gold pieces.
Good day, Alban. Do you know anything about good semi-honest work?
He'd be perfect for this job Agrin Copperwing needs done. You'll find him at the King's Books.
I believe that's in the bottom left-hand corner of the... Yes, it is. Oh. Now that we have the whole set, I wanted to make sure that that's locked in. Just want to take a minute and see if there's anything I can sell. Looks like I'm already cleared out though. always wondered if there's a doorway that I could go into a dungeon in here. Overshot.
The shop is laid out in a practical and straightforward manner. All of its items seem to be of adequate construction.
We meet again.
Smuggling is a nasty word, isn't it? I prefer to say I need some legally ambiguous stuff brought to a place where some elements will welcome it, and others, the law specifically, will not. Interested?
Yes.
Grand. Here's the scheme, guys. I have a little side business exporting Sursum to Crossbourne, but my regular agents are being watched by the King's Guard. If you can get the Sursum to Crossbourne to a place called the Morton Residence, my client, Donor Buckinghouse, will give you 1,108 gold pieces that I mentioned.
You didn't mention that yet.
Don't talk to any lawmen while you have the Sursum. If you don't, and don't fail to get it to the Morton residence in 14 days, or I'll make it my life business to destroy your reputation with the government, the underworld, and anyone else I can think of. But I'm sure you won't fail me. Good luck, my child. Make angered Copperwing proud.
Alright, so first thing we'll do is take a look and see how long it takes us to get across Bourne. "3 days, we can manage that on our own."
By the frozen wastes, it's good to see you, Caius.
Could you please tell me where I can find Donor Buckinghouse?
Gotta be around here somewhere around here.
Do you know where I might find Donor Buckinghouse?
Best way you can go, right here. You can see the Morton residence on your map.
Thank you for your help.
Someone calls out, "Come in!"
Of your lives? Alright, well.
Listen, kid, nothing personal. Just kiss me the Sursum and I'll tell my boss you got away. Deal?
No. Oh, crap. I might have to reload. let's not. At least we know where the location is.
A jolly voice says, "Welcome to my home."
I'm assuming it's the same layout as before, so.
Wait a minute, kid. We don't want you. Just hang our Copperwing in the Sursum. Hand it over and you can get out of here, okay?
No. Sorry about that. Now the big dilemma is I'm not quite sure what to do after the fact.
A letter has been slipped into your hands. Dear Caius, you've been set up. Denor Buckinghouse is not at the Morton residence. A knight named Dunyan Harsley is waiting there to ambush you. If you want to get rid of that Sursum, bring it to me at the Crimson Fawn here in Longgate.
Trying to make sure that I'm back in time to do the summoning. Oh, Party of the Hour is also a place that I can do a summoning. But we should be okay for the next little while. Especially because the drawback of doing the Order of the Hour is that if we don't have enough money, there's no bank to go to.
Ah, you received my letter. Good thing for you. There was a nasty situation brewing, and I'd hate to have you caught up in it. I'll take that sursum in return for my services clearing up your involvement in this botched smuggling scheme. No need to thank me.
Nope. Alright, so I'm willing to wait a couple of days at Daggerfall. So we'll find a spot in a nearby inn. Sure, Black Dungeon works. We'll read some books, we'll practice magic. Everything will be splendid. But we'll never visit the dirty goat.
Incense and soft music soothe your nerves as you cross the threshold. Each item in this shop is carefully mounted and displayed, and not the slightest defect can be detected on any item within. You've been the trainer practice for 3 hours. The trainer tells you to reflect on what you've learned and to see if you can put it to good use.
To the Black Dungeon. Days, please.
That'll be 9 gold pieces. You barred it down to that.
Very well. So here we'll just take the opportunity to get a little magic practice. It is the ninth of Rain's Hand we're waiting for, so to start with, I need to just leave the computer for a quick second, and I will be back and we will do a reading, and then we'll do another cycle. Just 1 second. Sorry about the delay.
King Edward, Chapter 9. Luck.
I think we've already read this one. And it looks like I need to use the wiki for this. Wait.
King Edward, Chapter 10. Josiah and Lucky, Part 2. Matt's continued his story of Lucky and Josiah.
And I'm gonna switch to the wiki here.
10 years passed, 20 of them. More children came. Timmy took a bride. The land continued to prosper. Few died, so there were many people now, and much of the forest was cleared for farms. Others became soldiers or sailors. Their voyages and battles all prospered, and they returned home laden with booty. The gods were with them, people said, for they were virtuous and deserving folk. Skyrim was now united under King Vrag the Gifted, second and noblest son to the legendary Herald of Ysgramor. Thus Josiah's king was High King of all of Skyrim. The Nords under Vrag's leadership spread into Morrowind and High Rock, conquering some of the sly and thievish Dark Elves and weak and superstitious Bretons. Josiah and Lucky had opened a store and built a fine big house for their family. One night Josiah woke alone and heard voices in the hall. She left her bed and crept to see. The voices sounded angry. Lucky was standing there in his nightshirt. The passing years had changed him little. He looked no older, but he had grown leaner and paler, and somehow less substantial. Standing with him was a tall matronly woman, dark-haired and clad in a fine blue robe, a knight in black armor, carrying a black sword, and a handsome blond man, green-clad, with a bow. 2 elves were there as well, one fair with golden skin, one had a harp, the other had a lute. Elves had not been seen in Skyrim in years. How did quiet, simple Lucky come to know such grand people? Is this how you keep your pact with us? Do we not make the rules clear to you? The woman was shouting at Lucky, who only muttered, "Lady Mara, I didn't realize it had been so long. It was only for a few days, and then a few days more. And then there were the children, and Josiah needed me. I thought no harm. Things seemed to go well for everyone. It hadn't been so long. Tamriel did well enough without me before." Lucky spoke softly, yet his face was set, and Josiah knew how stubborn he could be. "Everyone? What of the Bretons? What of the Dark Elves and the Wood Elves? Of the Ice Elves I say nothing. They are gone altogether and forever." Such shy folk. "I tried," Lucky faltered. "I did try. The Ice Elves are very hard to find, and not that friendly when I did find them." Are all the elves to follow them, and the Bretons and the other races?" I will go. But High Rock and Morrowind are so far from here, and how can I leave my children? Surely I'm entitled to children, and my woman." "You could have arranged matters as I did," said the green-clad ranger. "Now it's too late for that. Matters have gone too far. We trusted you. It was a simple assignment, yet we could have watched them." The last sentence was addressed to the Black Knight. "I did watch him," the knight snapped, waving his sword, which Josiah now saw was actually part of his arm. "Yet alone I could do nothing. I had a few devotees enter High Rock or Morrowind. Once I realized that I had to find the rest of you, alone I could do little. What I could, I did. They're halted for now, yet the damage must be repaired, and he who caused it must do the fixing. Tinker. It won't be easy. You'll have to avoid the Skyrim folk altogether for a couple of 100 years, I think." "No, my Lord Ebenarm, no!" The cry was wrenched from Lucky's heart. "I cannot. I implore you. Do not ask it of me. Leave me something of my own. Why must I always give it to all the others? I'm tired of it. You promised me a life. What you gave me, that endless wandering, was not a life. The Black Knight Ebon Arm scowled back at Lucky. We're a gentlefolk, the Wood Elf Bard said in his musical tones. Yet Zenithar can no longer be restrained, and if he wars against you, the other elven gods stand with him. If the gods war, Tamriel itself might be destroyed. You may find Daedra to stand with you. They love chaos. But I think you will find that not even Springseed, Emedarm, and Mara will fight for you if you defy them further. Jeffra speaks the truth, as ever. Let us not speak of war amongst ourselves, my friend. We wish your folk no ill. We deeply regret what has happened, and will labor to repair our fault. I regret our long absence, yet it was necessary. Rayan and I were needed elsewhere, Mara said. And not even a god or goddess can be everywhere at once. As for you, Sai, she said, returning to Lucky, one night a year with your woman and your children I will grant you, but not in the flesh. The temptations are far too strong for you, I see. It was a mistake to let you hold the flesh so long. I apologize to the rest of you. Now go and make your farewells. You are dismissed. The knight and ranger vanished, but the elves remained. The golden-skinned one spoke to Mara. Watch these new folk of yours more carefully, Lady Mara. We are a patient people, and kindly disposed to other sentient races, yet there are limits to our patience. Take warning. Then the elves, too, were gone. Lucky fell to his knees, clutching at Mara's robe, his face a mask of anguish. Lady, wait, I implore you. Am I never to feel again? Never? It is more than I can bear. The rest of you can assume mortal form on occasion. Better I should have died naturally and gone to rest, he said bitterly. Mara considered frowning. Others have paid dearly for the life you have stolen. Their spirits are not at rest. They, too, will exact payment. And yet very well. If you will labor to repair the damage that you have done, then you may on occasion assume bodily form, but not as a human. Wolf shape shall be yours, in return for the kindness you showed Grelin. And she was gone, leaving Lucky standing alone barefoot. Josiah ran to him and clasped him. Oh, how thin and cold he was. What is it, dearest? Who are they? What does it mean? Oh, don't leave us. I must, he said, shivering. I have stayed far too long. My dearest, I am luck itself. I was born with the talent, though mortal as yourself. My lord took me for a soldier. I was killed in my first battle, even as the battle was won. I e'er brought luck to others, ne'er to myself, never. Ebenarm appeared to me. He said I had an interesting talent and offered me immortality if I would agree to spread my luck about. He said the gods were overworked, seeing to events and constantly quarreling over what should happen. He thought that I could balance things out naturally with my inborn talent. I was young. I'd barely lived. I didn't want to die, and so I agreed, and Ebenarm said that I could keep my body for a time. I wouldn't age or die, but I would fade slowly, as you have seen. I am nearly 80 now. I did as he bade for many years, and then I met you. I found myself trapped by your need, I think. I was your luck, you see, what you needed. And truth is, I needed you too, my dear love. Yet while I've stayed here, my luck has spread like ripples, the strongest in the center, weak along the edges, until there's none in all of Morrowind and High Rock and the wilderness to the south, and the folk are dead or chained in slavery. Also, I brought luck only to the Nords, among whom I've lived, and so the Wood Elves have fled and the Ice Elves have died. Now I must go and bring luck to them and redress the balance, as it should have been. He went to the children's rooms and kissed them as they slept, while tears fell on them. He said, I'll be with you one night a year, even though you will not see me. Yet you will feel my presence, dearest. Oh, and I could never speak of love or marriage, but you know I love you, as no man or god loved woman. Then he kissed her one last time and was gone. Matt stopped talking at last. The fire had burned down to ashes. Edward drew a long breath. That's some story, Edward said. Is it true? Are you calling my grandmother a liar? I know she used to leave a bit of food in a bowl of milk out on winter nights. For the wolf, she said. And we Nords hold it very unlucky to attack a wolf unless it attacks you. Might just be Sai. My grandmother said that she got the tale from her great-grandmother, and her great was Josiah herself, or so she said. Or maybe it was her great-great-grandmother. I get lost there. Anyways, it happened during the reign of King Vrag the Gifted, like I said, when the Nords invaded Morrowind and High Rock. It took Sai 150 years to get things right again, and he needed a lot of help. From Morland's brothers and father, among others. The Dark Elves and Britons have been lucky to get their lands back, you see. It's been hard times for the Skyrim folk, although once your luck builds up the way theirs did, it takes a long time for it to really run out altogether. And Sai didn't make the same mistake again. He's been Freddy Luck around ever since, otherwise folk get arrogant and start thinking they're entitled more than others. Yet he's kept his promise. You see, I'm his descendant, and once a year I feel his presence, and that was tonight. I thought being a god means you can do just as you please, Edward said. Well, they can, you see. Sai did for a while, but he and his fellow gods weren't pleased. With the results. There are rules to being a god, it seems, just as there are rules to being a man or a boy. Who makes the rules, then? Edward demanded. Mats laughed. Best save that question up for the Archmagister. It's much too deep for me. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm going to have a drink. I'm parched after so much tucking, and then rouse Myth so I can sleep myself. Mats, I was taught that Morland's father and brothers were just raiders, and that the Nords were the real owners of the lands they took. That Dark Elves come up out of the ground and raid for meanness and profit. Morland's father, Cronin, and his brothers, Crutheus and Effin, took to raiding after the Nords drove them out of Eppenhart. Guerrilla warfare isn't pretty, but neither is losing your homeland. Human memories of that time are faded hand-me-downs, but there's a number of Dark Elves who lived through it still around. Morland's Aunt Yoris, for one, she who rules Craigenmore. Oh, there's some Dark Elves still along the borderland in Blacklight who are thieves and kidnappers, no question. They have holds up in the mountain caverns and raid farms and villages east of Skyrim. But Morland's folk have naught to do with them, leastways not since they regained their own lands in Morrowind. Morland hates raiding. He'd stop it if he could, Matt sighed. Why can't he? Mats yawned widely. It's a matter of politics and power, boy. You ask him about it, and you'll likely get more of an answer than you want for once. Me? I'm off to bed. Good night.
This series definitely goes on really long, but I rather like that entry. Trying to decide if I want to read part 11. Yeah, you know what? We'll do one. Each time we rest, we'll read a bedtime story.
King Edward Part 11. The companions stayed the night in a crude but comfortable inn at a tiny village that called itself Raven Spring, located in the foothills of the Rothgarian Mountains.
Just want to double check this is the right one. Yep, it is.
The next morning, they resumed their journey eastward, moving through the rolling hills towards the Skyrim and Hammerfell borders, and camping the next 2 nights under the clear early summer skies. When they resumed traveling the third morning, Morland told everyone to watch the slopes north of the road for a notch opening to a high meadow that faced to the southwest. Shortly afterward, everyone spotted it almost simultaneously when the group completed a bend around a rocky outcrop. Silk and Beach went ahead to scout a good route, and then took for a campsite for the evening ahead. By dusk, they had covered most of the distance to the meadow, but still faced some stiff climbing the next morning. They agreed that it was time to, camp? Camp once again, but happily a lunchtime picnic seemed very likely the next day. By midday the next day, which was Lordus the 5th of mid-year, the companions were sprawled across a grassy slope within the dragon village, having been joined by Akatosh and the other dragon. This second dragon was smaller than Akatosh and seemed to be a female, although characteristically Akatosh had just introduced the dragon as Debugen, with no further explanations being forthcoming. The 2 dragons politely chatted with the humanoids as they enjoyed their repast. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. The Debugen flew out afterwards to an arc gracefully above, and then swooped down upon a steer in a grassy field some distance away. Akatosh had been watching Edward's reaction to this, and asked, "Why did you flinch, Edward? Debugen has not eaten recently, and really behaved no differently than you just have." Edward replied with a small smile, "I don't think that our meal was quite that violent in nature." Akatosh returned the smile, and then responded, "A good reminder, then, that we are only similar rather than the same." Edward paused, squinting into the mid-afternoon sun, and then turned to the golden dragon. Akatosh, why did you choose this spot for your village? Well, it was high enough up into the mountains to suit us, but flat enough for raising cattle, with trees for the deer. And it is very defensible for all of us. There is plenty of room for humans to build ranches and farms, and the elves are quite comfortable in the dense trees along the cliff edges. The adits and the surrounding cliff provide us the access to our lairs, which we have located within the mining tunnel system. All in all, an ideal site for such an experiment involving this many races of beings. It even opens up to the southwest, providing reasonable warmth for the smaller beings, with some protection from the elements in the colder months. Edward responded, "It is difficult for me to get used to the notion of a village without some central concentration of buildings, but perhaps these will be developed in the future, at least a few buildings for meetings and socializing. I suppose there are also some beautiful sunsets to be seen." The dragon smiled again but replied, "Quite so. But I'm the only one of dragonkind to show any interest, and that was not a legitimate consideration when we chose this site." Then wistfully, "I wish that I could assemble the..." I'm just going to switch back to the wiki here. I wish that I could assemble the words to describe some of them. I have attempted this many times, but the results are just not very admirable. More briskly, by the way, we do intend to erect a meeting hall for the humanoids, and also some stores for barter and other exchanges of goods. Morlin had wandered over and seated himself, and asked, with a notable absence of the usual humanoid respect for dragons, "Whatever possessed you to attempt such a crazy experiment, Akatosh?" The dragon paused thoughtfully and then replied, "As is my wont, I had been analyzing. In this case, one might say the history of dragon behavior. Clearly, our lengthy contest of resistance to these new Aurelian gods was futile, but it took many of our generations for us to realize and accept this. Then our next pattern was to isolate ourselves, even from each other, and to resist intrusion from any and all beings. The exception, of course, was to mate among ourselves and procreate our race. However, aside from that one activity, we fought any and all for our precious privacy, and really for no good reason, except that we can be an especially stubborn race." Edward said, "Then you maintained a pattern of behavior long after the reason for it was gone." Akatosh looked a bit embarrassed. He said stiffly, "I believe that is what I just said. We are not the only sentient race to fall prey to that." Edward said, "The Archmagister has told me that such behavior is inborn." Morlin smiled at him. "And inborn behavior patterns are a particular problem for long-lived species who change slowly as condition changes. We elves suffer from it far more than you short-lived humans, but which is why we like to keep things the way that they are, though life is change, and to resist it utterly is death. Dragons live far longer than elves, and in consequence breed even more slowly. Still, who can say what alterations being born into a social setting may produce, for good or ill, in dragon behavior?" Illyria had by this time joined the conversation and observed, "The Daedra must have been long pleased with dragon behavior." Akatosh responded, "Perhaps so, but I approached our queen with suggestions more so because it seemed clear that we as a race had fallen into stasis, and we needed to break this shell in order to invigorate ourselves. She didn't quite agree with me, but perhaps because of my reputation, she told me to go ahead and make this attempt." By this point, all the companions were sitting within hearing range, and Matt said, "Did you have to get your queen's permission, and have there been many difficulties among the various races?" "Permission is not quite accurate in this case, Mats. Being the beings that we are, it was more so that I was obliged to tell her of this so that she could have the information. For example, other dragons regularly come to me with potential military intelligence, following this philosophy of preparedness." Mats grinned and said, "You mean just in case, right? But what about these elves and humans?" "Ah, our humanoid lord and lady do set a more remarkable example of tolerance and respect for differing shapes and customs. I owe a debt of gratitude to Morlin for this loan of his smiths and miners, who have been most generous in sharing their knowledge and skills with the Bretons that my young friend Edward and I have persuaded to attempt settlement here. It is my experience that Bretons, well, many Bretons, will do virtually anything as long as it is profitable and they gain skill and knowledge from it. The Nordic lust for individual honor and glory makes the mithril armor and weapons produced here extremely profitable. It was sheer genius that inspired Illyria to insist that we sell only to the nobility, while the delving opens new tunnels and provides access to that which we dragons require. Akatosh smiled a little slyly. He was very reticent on the subject of exactly what dragons required. Beech and Willow have made it known among the people that the wood elves are welcome here, so those who have long missed their ancient high rock homes have returned to these hills. Fortunate for me now that I'm a duke and thus qualified to wear and carry mithril. If I could only afford more than a piece or two, but for the cost I might retire, Matt said. If you retired, you would not require the mithril, Morlin pointed out. And what of my son and daughter? Thinkest thou I will beg from thee for them? Matt said indignantly. My knees and wind may not be what they once were, I grant you. In fact, I was somewhat tempted to remain up here. Now I am tempted to remain up here. Now I am here. Yet I can still swing my axe with any. Myth grinned delightedly. Nords can't count. It's why they seek honor and glory, not profit. Honor and glory are not amenable to enumeration, much past what one can tally on the fingers. Mats, if thou were but 39, thou wert the largest 10-year-old humanoid I had ever met or hoped to meet. But when then these benefits to those who neither delve nor smith, Mats persisted, ignoring his old friend. I would think that many would be terrified to live close to such formidable beings. Matt spoke of the last with a sly grin. Well, on the other hand, in the presence of formidable beings means that they are certainly well protected. This area is surprisingly fertile, so the crops seem to be growing well. And although they provide the meat for us, we allocate 1/5 of each herd for them for their own consumption. We've also been finding out what I've long suspected, that 3 sets of races, when combined, fight much more effectively than the sum of each when entered in isolation. That is, each race covers or cancels weaknesses of the others. At least it is certainly true that the local goblin population has been drastically reduced in a very short period of time. Aye, Edward responded, so Morlin proved in Morrowind. With a bit of help from his friends, Morlin acknowledged. I reap the praise, but in truth, I'm a little more than the standard they wave, and at times I feel a bit more like the target they set up. A wave of laughter greeted this remark. Edward persisted. With you and the others up here, Akatosh, I feel my borders are well guarded, should Skyrim ever feel the urge to move its borders west again. Illyria asked, was it easy to convince the other dragons to move here? Actually, the most difficult part of that was moving our hordes to our new lairs, Akatosh responded with a lazy smile. Although once it was known that we actually have no use for the metals, gems, and jewelry that we accumulate, everything went much more smoothly. But then, more seriously, essentially, I had to approach each dragon personally and convince them that this idea had merit. Again, once I had persuaded a couple of our especially independent specimens, things went much more smoothly. However, there are only 9 of us living in this area, and there really is only room for 2 or 3 more of us. We shall have to see what develops hereafter. Illyria now observed, I think now that the gods and goddesses may look very favorably indeed on dragon behavior. That may be so, Illyria, but again, this was not really why this was done. Besides, they may still remember and resent our long opposition to them. Beech said deferentially, but what is the name of this village? Akatosh sighed and then responded, I fear that we shall never reach a decision, since each race has decided opinions in that regard. Perhaps once the initial building phase is completed, we'll be more contemplative about such matters. Beech replied, that just doesn't seem right. Everywhere should have a name, shouldn't it? Willow chuckled and said, perhaps to us this is so, but who knows how dragons think? I'm sure that humans and elves will squabble over the style of the name beside the specifics of it. Morlin interrupted the great drama. Surely you don't mean to imply that an elf can be overly stubborn, and the discussion dissolved into a period of laughter and teasing amongst the group. Presently, Akatosh said, I favor the name Section 22. Beech stared at him. Akatosh, I see thou dost mean what thou dost mean by thy difficulties with the poetic. If you allow my frank opinion, that is the single worst village name I have ever heard. Akatosh sighed gustily, and then pardoned himself hastily to Beech. Humanoids found dragon size quite unpleasant and sometimes actually hazardous. When thou seest what I mean by differences, to me it is very meaningful. And the most appropriate is Section 16. Section 16 any better of a name? Not? Then is it the word section that offends you? And if In what way is that inferior to keep, or Reich, or Glen, or hold? Edward said, but Akatosh, a name should make some sense. At least humans think so. You should have 21 other sections first if you're going to name this place 22. Really? Akatosh said. Why is that? Are not all numbers equally valid? They serve well to distinguish one place from another. There could be many green vales, for instance. I myself know of 4 such villages. The number 22 does appeal to me aesthetically, as well as possessing some sense, at least to me, he smiled secretively. Morlin said, I think Lord Akatosh is enjoying what some call an in-joke. Were I so rash as to instruct a dragon in manners? Who, Silk said, would ever accuse Morlin of being rash? A bit later, Edward asked Akatosh, do you think we could play a game or two of battle? I brought the board and playing pieces with me. Morlin interrupted. I'm afraid that Akatosh and I must discuss some matters this evening. You'd only lose again anyway, he added with a fond smile. Edward replied, but I can beat everyone else. Akatosh, will I ever win a game with you? No, Edward, you won't. And Akatosh was slightly bemused by Edward's startled expression, and then with a hearty laugh that quickly followed it. That wasn't very diplomatic of you, Akatosh, but why won't I ever win? Because I have been playing for much longer than you have, Edward, and so long as I continue to play, you will not be able to catch up with me. Besides, this game is what I am starting to think of as a bounded problem, and that sort is most easily dealt with. What do you mean by bounded problem, Akatosh asked Mats. That is a problem that has a countable number of possible actions and results, Mats. There are only 81 squares on the board, and each side has exactly 27 playing pieces. Each piece moves in a specific way, and so on. The game is like a real battle, isn't it? Asked Sass. No, it is very good practice for learning and thinking about how to execute a battle, but my elven archers never become tired or demoralized, and my master mage always does what I want. Such things seldom happen in a real battle. Morlin nodded in agreement, and then asked with mock slyness, then what is an example of an unbounded problem? Certainly a real battle, but also, to me, a poem is an unbounded problem. But any poem can be analyzed, Akatosh, Illyria asked chidingly. Of course, but only after it is written. I am unable to define or bound the act of writing it, though. That is the act of creating it. If I start to write a poem, there are so many possibilities. And then Riley, I never get beyond the first line because I start imagining all the things that I could have put in the beginning, and
that is the end of part 11. A new level. At this point, I just think more strength makes as much sense as anything else. Alright, in the final chapter of King Edward.
King Edward Part the 12th.
And as before, we'll just go to the wiki.
The dragon had paused, and so Edward interjected. Mother and I have been discussing the nature of the gods recently, Akatosh, and she thinks that poetry would be a godly activity. What do you think about that notion? I am not so certain that one can attribute anything to the gods, Edward. They are another example of an unbounded problem, of course, but also their characteristics are just not very well known to us. But surely one can determine things about any being that is a god. Akatosh replied, I do not think that we can, at present. They are not like the Daedra, who have a nature that is with them at birth. That is, the Daedra capabilities are inherent in them, and are not the result of any changes that have occurred to them. Willow interrupted. Akatosh, we can determine that the gods have a few basic characteristics, can't we? Edward added, of course, Akatosh, they are powerful beings who can perform acts that are incomprehensible to us. That in itself must signify their difference. Akatosh nodded and replied, I understand your point of view, but to a farming community on Tamriel and our southern lands, that could also describe how they would perceive me. Perhaps this is attributable to the fact that they seldom see a dragon nowadays, but it also does not mean that I am a god. Neither does it mean that I am not a god. Willow giggled and said, Of course you're not a god, Akatosh, and Edward, smiling, nodded in agreement. Akatosh replied, How do you know, Willow? I can understand that you would guess that I am not a god, particularly since I am a dragon. He grinned and then continued, But how can you know that I am not a god? Edward scoffingly replied, Well, I know that I'm not a god anyway, and I've certainly never seen you perform any godly acts, Akatosh. You also don't seem to have any worshippers about either.
Well, I'm one.
The companions were smiling and generally agreeing with this, but Akatosh responded, But that does not mean I have no worshippers, nor does it mean that I cannot perform any godly acts. It just means that you have not seen either of these. I am not yet certain that gods and goddesses require worshippers to maintain their existence. And as I said, I can perform magic that would look like godly act to many Tamrelians. But the gods must have worshippers, Akatosh, said Illyria. That's how they get their sustenance, or whatever it is that allows them to continue to be godly. Husband, you must know more about this subject. After all, you made a god of your brother's Stepan. I did no such thing, Morlun responded with a touch of indignation. His godhood is between him and his worshippers, among whom I am numbered. I did establish a temple cult in his memory. Anyone with the worldly means could do as much for anyone, living or dead. This alone is not enough. Maybe it helps facilitate matters, but I think it's not really necessary. I know no more about it, but if you want my opinion... He paused politely for confirmation that it was indeed still solicited, as elven etiquette demanded if one is giving an opinion at length. He continued, There must be something, godly in that person's soul or essence, or whatever it is that does not die with the body. I know not whether the capacity is innate in the person, from birth or conception or quickening, whether it is that soul and body are wedded for a lifespan, or whether great deeds and great generosity might breed it, enlarging the soul and transmuting it, so to speak. We all change and grow with each passing day, with every breath, some more than others. What else is life about? He went on without pausing for an answer to his rhetorical question, probably for fear that he might get one. In other cases, gods seem to arise from a locality, a mountain or a spring or a wood or a collection of localities such as Tamriel itself. Places, like persons, have souls, some greater than others. This place might produce a god or a Daedra, or maybe it already has one or more. As it changes, so do its gods and Daedra, I think. Maybe they can choose to resist the change or aid it, if propitiated. He looked at Akatosh inquiringly. The dragon had stopped fighting the new gods, he said, but would he go so far as to worship them? That speaks to the question of whence gods arise, but source is not nature. Of that I know as little as the rest of you, maybe less, since the question does not truly interest me. The gods are, my worship of them benefits me and mine. It is sufficient. Akatosh did not respond immediately, and Illyria refused to be distracted. But suppose such a cult were established and worshippers provided for, of one of a small and mean spirit. Would that spirit not become a god? I suppose it might be done, if one were determined enough and had the sufficiency of means to pay worshippers to perform rituals without spirit behind them. Maybe that's where small mean gods come from, wife. Or maybe Daedra. Maybe I'll raise a cult to thee and see what happens. Are you calling my spirit small and mean? Ali glared at him. Only by comparison. You don't fancy yourself a goddess, do you? You might make a Daedra, though. The experiment might be a little too chancy. Could I just mourn you for a century or two instead? I'll think on it. What about you? You've deeds enough already to qualify for godhood, surely. Although if you plan on many more such, you may not outlive me. I'm doomed to be Ra'athium, living and dead. It's godhood of a sort, but what a sort. Don't begrudge me my long lifespan. Think of me as doomed to eternity in the gloomy Ebonheart council chamber, listening to the eternal wrangles. Small wonder that the dead Rathim are pulled the place down on the live ones 20 years ago, thus causing my brother and mother to join their number. The dead Ra'athim must have welcomed a century and a half of respite while the Nords held Ebonheart. But your brother Sipan was killed too, as well as your brother King Crutheus. And Sipan wasn't Ra'athim, being your mother's son and not your father's, if I have the story straight. That's why he got his own temple, Edward said. So why did they kill him too? The story sounds very Daedric to me. You'll have me justify the ways of the gods to you, would you? I think they act for ends we cannot see, and slay the just and unjust together. Not that I'd label any of my kin as either, not altogether. We see only the means. How can we judge? Gods too face choices. I do not think their power supreme. They can overrule nature on occasion, as can any mage, yet they, like mages, are in the end bound by it. And their overrule must answer other rules still, and in those rules, whatever they be, I think lies the answer to your questions. I think it's not something men and women may know while living. Akatosh smiled and replied, It is not so easy to describe the gods, is it? This is true enough, though myself included, each of us thinks that we have a mental picture of what godliness means. On the other hand, the gods and goddesses certainly do exist, and I also believe that there is a connection of some sort between them and the Daedra, and another connection between these entities and power associated with performing magic. The priests of Julianos have been calling this power magica, said a stranger who had joined the group. Akatosh replied, Greetings, Bard. Please allow me to introduce Joffrey, a wandering poet who's been visiting our village for these last few days. The companions greeted the wood elf newcomer, some rising to their feet to do so according to their individual customs, and then all resumed sitting, actually sprawling about and conversing. A number of priests are theorizing that the gods and goddesses live on another plane, as do the Daedra. There's some debate amongst these priests as to whether they share the same plane of existence, or whether each has their own. And some of the Elysian priests are claiming that we can visit these alternate planes in our nightly dreams, added Beach. Edward asked, Why doesn't someone just ask a goddess or a Daedra about this? Joffrey chuckled and replied, Most of us are not able to be so thoughtful when confronted by one of these beings, Edward. Also, there is a common belief that the gods and Daedra are reluctant to discuss their own natures, as dragons are to reveal anyone's true name. Edward looked quizzically at Akatosh, but Beach stated to Joffrey, Well said, Bard, and the pair shared the slightest of smiles. Beach said to them, Do you know what the resolutions of Xanathar has been saying about the gods and magic? This magic power, or magica, is just the power generated by the existence of, existence itself. When it becomes focused by living beings through natural processes, then it becomes accessible to the gods and goddesses as worship power, which is the next level of magica. After receiving some from their worshippers, the gods can then concentrate it up to god-level power, the true magica. The gods themselves can't generate the mid-level magica, since they are dependent on it for their own existence, but they can convert it to magica, which then can be used by mortals to cast spells. This magica is usually dispersed widely across the planes, but there are areas of greater and lesser concentration due to the interfaces with the dispersion process. When a goddess loses worshippers, her inflow of mid-level magica is decreased, so she in turn produces less god-level magica. With less magica under her control, for providing to worshippers or dispersion, her influence is decreased in the mortal planes. Of course, the converse is also true. In the extreme, she receives nothing and is relegated to a state of stasis, barely existing from the ordinary magica generated by her few remaining consecrated lands, zones of influence, and so on. Beach continued. On the other hand, Daedra receive very specific or modified mid-level magica from a few mortals with specific areas of interest, and these Daedra are nominally tied to very specific circumstances. Because of their nature, they gain much more power from their small worship base, but the gods, with their much broader base, generally have greater overall power, even though the amount of concentrated worship that they receive from any one source is much less than a Daedra's. Most of the magica that the gods process is dispersed into and throughout the universe, no longer under their control, thereby making it available for everyone. It's not really something they do consciously, but is a natural process that happens automatically. In other words, just because they are divine. Illyria said, I would think that magica is simply available to sentient beings, although the gods and Daedra could facilitate its usage. I would think that the gods and Daedra have other influences on us as well, because not everyone has spellcasting ability. Maybe in those alternate planes, it's actually existence and not sentient entities that radiate magica, just as the stars give off light in our dimension. I just assume that magica is out there in the ether, or maybe sentient consciousness automatically tap into an alternate plane as they sleep. I think that everyone has some supply of magica, but most don't know how to use it very well, or as they adopt a way of life that inhibits and forbids its use. Maybe certain gods and Daedra serve as facilitators for the entire process. that is, both obtaining and using magicka? But how do priests heal and cure and bless? Is magicka involved at all, or do they invoke their goddesses directly? Sass said, I am not sure that magicka is used. Perhaps there is another capability involved here. This capability would be unknown at this time, and maybe even unsensed. But I feel fairly certain that somehow this godly it is a godly force that they are employing. Then Jeffrey replied, Sass, I believe that magicka fills the universe of planes. All things are infused with magicka to one extent or another. In this regard, magicka is attracted to some people and things over others, and some people with a talent or training and can control or even release magicka in new forms. There may be other sources of magicka available by tapping into alternate and otherworldly planes. There is also the possibility of alternate planes that are entirely void of magicka. Regardless, certain beings of great power, such as the gods and Daedra, can only control magicka, but can see, absorb, and transfuse magicka and form objects and people. By employing this ability, worshippers of these beings are sometimes capable of greater acts of magic than they could accomplish otherwise. Also, in this way, some items sacred to powerful beings can be said to be holy, with additional amounts of directed magicka provided by gods or goddesses. Magic items fall into two main categories by definition: items that draw on the surrounding magicka to create spell-like effects, and items that hold magicka in reserve for their own internal effects. Normally, magic items which absorb magicka, giving increased abilities to their wielders, only affect themselves and are considered to use internal magicka. In some areas where great amounts of magicka have been used, the surroundings may be completely devoid of it. This, of course, negates the ability of beings to produce magic effects in these areas, although gods and Daedra may carry their own supplies of magicka, as do magic items that do not depend on the use of surrounding magicka. Illyria said, We've been investigating some rumors and stories concerning something that might be called anti-magicka. I think that the presence of a powerful Daedra with whom you weren't in tune would cause interference with spell casting, maybe even cancel out existing spells. Perhaps particular Daedra simply favor thief or warrior types, or some goddesses and their priests might frown on competing magic in certain areas, for example in locations dedicated to them, so then unauthorized spells could interfere with their rituals. Willow asked, Can Daedra supply magicka? And how about a god and a Daedra being nearby? Wouldn't they sort of nullify each other's powers? This might be the cause of the anti-magicka effect. I've experienced an anti-magicka zone myself, inserted Myth. It felt a lot like the effect of casting a spell like Dispel Magicka. At the time, I thought a truly powerful spellcaster could still effectively cast spells, but their resulting power would have been much reduced. I didn't get a chance to test this out, though, added Myth with a smile. We can also assume that certain powerful spells, creatures, and even magic items might actually drain the surrounding area of magicka, replied Jeffrey. This could be extended to places where great amounts of magic energy were once gathered and expended. For example, in ancient temples where great spells were cast, or battlefields where powerful mages contested. Perhaps certain metals or stones could act as absorbers of magicka, allowing for whole structures of anti-magicka zones. If so, you might be able to wear an amulet made out of anti-magicka material and gain a good advantage against spellcasters. Perhaps the purity of the material would allow for better magic resistance. Akatosh spoke. Dragons have long been interested in the anti-magicka effect, naturally enough. We have found some amulets that appear to act as magicka absorbers. They might contain something like negative magicka, which in case would attract any stray magicka floating free in the local area. They are made of stone or mineral, resembling marble. It is very rare, but could be extracted and shaped by skilled craftsmen. For example, I'm sure that the dwarves would have worked with this material. They might have made these amulets, or even the statue that I once saw. It was taller than any of you humanoids. Regardless, in these mountains, we have found deposits scattered throughout the halls and tunnels at random, sometimes deep within the walls. Consequently, one appears to go in and out of these anti-magicka zones of varying intensities, with little or no warning. I've been imagining this material works almost automatically. It seems to reflexively absorb magicka if given a chance to. However, we cannot rule out the possibility that they have been magically charged somehow. Perhaps this happened long ago, but the charge has somehow remained. Morlin asked, would the amulet affect its wearer, or would he be immune? Maybe a blocking spell could be developed and then cast to shield the wearer from the effects of the substance. Morlin then added, But Akatosh, getting back to our earlier discussions, what do you think of the speculations concerning the connections between gods and goddesses, Daedra and Magica? Akatosh replied, I think there are many truths that we do not know, and perhaps there are some truths that we are not meant to know. Morlin added with a smile, All right then, I've always wanted to know this, considering the shape of your mouth and teeth. How do dragons manage to speak the humanoid language so clearly? Akatosh paused and then carefully responded. Why, in much the same way as we can fly, even though our wings are not actually strong enough to support such heavy torsos. Speaking of dragon flight and sunset, Smith said, rising to his feet and squinting into the red gold in the eastern sky, we have a visitor, Dragon Lord, and it is not a bird. Akatosh's head came up as he too scanned the sky. Tension grew in him, and by one the companions rose, watching as the distant dot grew nearer and resolved itself into the largest dragon they'd seen yet. Matilda, Akatosh exclaimed. She deigns to bestow her presence on us. His wings lifted and unfurled, and the companions broke and ran for cover as he took flight. The two dragons wheeled through the sky, spouting great gouts of flame against the purpling sky. They're fighting, Edward cried. What does it mean? Who is Matilda? I don't know who she is, son, Morlin replied, but they do not fight. You behold the dragon greeting ceremony. The pair are lit beyond a rock outcropping out of the sight. Should we go greet the stranger too? Edward asked. Nay, Myth said. They'll let us know when our presence is wanted. Look, even the other dragons stay away. It was true. Dragon heads had poked from the caverns to witness the event, but none of them had taken wing, and now they were retreating to their hordes within. The companions ambled back to the meadow together and built a fire as the chill wind had sprung up. The elves sang an evening hymn to the stars, deftly weaving the dark elf version with the wood elf form. Illyria added her voice to theirs, but Mats and Edward and Silk and Sass sat listening silently. They couldn't manage elven music of this kind. Joffrey had a particularly clear, sweet voice, Edward thought. Akatosh returned presently, smiling in satisfaction. Matilda is going to join us here, at least for a while, he said. He was actually glowing in the dusk, each scale giving off a golden radiance. Is she your queen? Edward asked, feeling very small and human. She just is. Maybe she'll want to meet you all one day. I hope so. Until then, I don't talk about other dragons, you know. To which Edward blinked in surprise and then surmise, and the discussion dissolved into jokes and songs for the remainder of that clear and beautiful evening.
Now, while I learned some interesting things about the world, I have no idea why this is a 12-part story about a kid named Edward, and I have no idea how he became king. But so ends the story of King Edward. Perfect time for summoning Daedra. I thought I calmed him down.
Incense and soft music soothe your nerves and as you cross the threshold. Each item in this shop is carefully mounted and displayed. Not the slightest defect can be detected on any item within. Training will cost you 1,600. Do you wish to receive training?
I do.
You and the trainer practice for 3 hours. The trainer tells you to reflect on what you've learned and see if you can put it to good use. Today is Morndis, the 9th of Rain's Hand, the day of summoning for Perite. Do you, Caius, wish to risk your life and very soul by summoning Perite into our mundane world?
I have no idea who that is, but sure.
You can't really have too much power, can you, Caius? You look a lot like someone I used to know, but that was back during your first era, so it couldn't very well be you, could it? Now then, if you'd like, I can give you a little shield of mine called the Spellbreaker. It will certainly give you the power that you want, but first I need a little proof of your seriousness. You are serious, aren't you? Excellent! It's wonderful seeing a dark elf with clear objectives. So rare in this day and age. Now then, there's this ancient vampire. Frankly, a vampire who I know you'd hate. Thoroughly stupid, unattractive, and mean-spirited sort. He needs to go on a one-way trip to you-know-where. Then, after you've taken care of that unpleasant business, go visit my friend, Rodorian Yomston, with a charming blonde-bearded man, who will meet you at the house of Debella in Tamwich. Now, I don't want to rush you, but I can't ask him to wait more than 13 days for you. Just getting to the citadel of Wixton may take a good while, so you ought not to dawdle along the way. Rodran Yomston will be happy to show you the Spellbreaker. Now, I've prattled on long enough. It's been a pleasure.
I suppose I can just use the teleport. Alright, 3 days for that. And Citadel of Wixton. Two days, alright, we can handle that. Alright, let's find a vampire. Ooh, Daedra hammer. That actually might work better than 15 to 30 versus... That has to count as a blunt weapon. I will double check though. is indeed. I also forgot I've got this, I've got a few other goodies, so let's deal with that really quick. Weapons while I have the weight, but I'm probably not going to hang on to them for long. This might be the vampire that we're after, so let's just take a minute here. See, there's more than one ancient vampire now. This is gonna be a massive pain. The problem is if this is the target, it's yeah, no surprise there. This will take a while to get loaded up again as it does the cloud saves. My apologies.
I'll leave the Caius voice off for a little bit. If my notes are correct, we were doing a biography of Baron Zaya at some point. My writing's been a little bit weird though, so I think we're on volume 6. I need to double check that. Or it could be 8. I don't think we're that far in it though. And I will admit, I'm not 100% sure what the whole story with what the point of the King Edward book was. There's interesting stuff that came in it, but it sort of feels like a big collection of things that happen, which, especially near the end, like the story of Luck was really interesting, and the conversation about Magicka is interesting and talks a little bit about how the world works. I just have no idea why it needed to be related to this person who we know as King Edward, but I don't believe is ever actually made king. But it might be I just wasn't paying close enough attention. So Okay, first set of cloud saves are done, and we're gonna have to redo the setup. This might actually be one point where I want to try like destruction spells and whatnot against the vampire just to save myself the frustration. And because I'm trying to fill in the silence, for those of you who are wondering, we will be back onto the main quest. I took notes from the Invocation of Azura, so the next one is the 9th of Second Seed. Now, I don't necessarily need to summon every Daedra, but seeing as they're sort of time sensitive, I've been trying to figure out where my best opportunities are. I was kind of hoping we would find the Ogma Infinium, but that already happened when we summoned Himeas Mora. So we got a little lucky with that. And that was sort of the last major event that I wanted to do. The rest of it will just be going through the story. And if there's a side mission that's interesting, obviously I take them up. But there's no like side business that I have to do that I'll consider the playthrough incomplete. Like, it'd be nice if I get the Archmagister job, but it's not a red line.
And now we return to the story of Caius. So I will try one more melee attack. God damn it. Oh, that's gonna hurt. Where'd the vampire go? Done. Daedric Warhammers is not a bad haul for the evening. Alright, so we took out 2 ancient vampires, but we don't seem to have taken out the vampire. At some point I'm gonna sell this off, but it'll probably take me a while. Alright, well I don't want to go back into this maze, but this seems the best bet to find new things. Because I'm floating, it's not counting. Happy to kill vampires for the Daedra, but could they be a little more specific next time? So many vampire ancients. This spell gives me some extra power. Oh no. Nice.
The scrap of parchment shows the location of Garefield's guard you recorded on your map.
Also recorded it on my notes. I'm starting to think that this is a pretty crappy deal that the Daedra just gave me. I keep hearing stuff move on this side.
You've slain Dyspius. Pyrate's revenge is complete.
So I think the way I'm going to handle this is I will take any looting of opportunity. But we're just going to teleport back to the entrance. Yeah, this one strikes me as particularly dumb. Ah, you're kidding me. Not I think that, yeah, this is the House of Dibella. I don't even know why I needed to ask. Did I read this wrong? Rodaron Yamston. Maybe this isn't the spot. Ah, here we go. The one person who's wearing clothes.
There you are, Caius. I'm Roderion Yomston. I believe the Master wanted you to find me. The Master is very pleased with your work on the dread ancient vampire. If you don't mind me saying so, the Master seems very fond of you in general. Here's the shield you wanted, the Spellbreaker. Spellcasters will come to fear you. I hope it pleases, Caius. Spellbreaker, superficially a dwarven tower shield, is one of the most ancient relics in Tamriel. Aside from its historical importance dating back to the Battle of Rorken Shalador, the Spellbreaker protects its wielder almost completely from any spellcaster, either by dispelling magics or silencing any mage about to cast a spell. It is said that the breaker still searches for its original owner, and it will not remain the property of anyone else for long. For most, possessing this Spellbreaker for any time is power enough. Spells, free action, and spell reflection.
And I almost certainly cannot wield it. Yes, the spell sword cannot equip a class appropriate. Fair enough. Let's see what we can sell to this store. I have a decent amount of money as well.
Sturdy shelves cobbled together out of scrap lumber holds the shop's wares. The items are sound and functional, but little more than that.
I am tempted just to sell the shield, but that probably isn't the right call. Yeah, I don't really need a spare.
Maybe you can get more than 34,779 gold and for that somewhere. But it's a fair price and it's my only offer.
Sure. Doesn't want the parchment. Now, normally I'd be looking for books, but in this case, I think I'm just trying to sell things and move on. Now, the last revelation.
Lysander's ghost appeared to me and told me that only the death or humiliation of his murderer, Lord Woodbourne, would lay his soul to rest. Lord Woodbourne is a noble of Wayrest and betrothed to Princess Elizana. He has a castle in the wilderness of Wayrest.
So I think we'll start by traveling to Wayrest. But I'm not clear on where his castle is. believe I just turned into a vampire. Doesn't it normally warn you? Let me just see if I'm supposed to get a warning. If I'm not, I think I need to play through it. Alright, here's what I will do. I think it will be interesting to play as a vampire, but I'm not 100% sure. Alright, see, it says healthy here, so... Here's what I'll do. I want to see if there's information you get from resting at a tavern.
Listen, Dark Elf, you and me both know that ain't worth a piece more than 4 gold, right? So let's not pretend. You don't have to agree to it, but that's what I'll pay you for it. Okay? I thought I was paying you?
Your sleep is troubled by nightmares of a beautiful woman who will be murdered in a dark place.
No, you know what? This is kind of dumb. I'm going to commit to what happened and we'll play through it. Sorry about havering, I just,
Death is not always eternal. For some, it is merely the time of waiting. Now is your time of waiting. Be patient, and all will be revealed.
I'm assuming it's because it's daylight. This is a problem. Mid-year, alright. Need to find a place to rest for. Just one day.
Liz and Dark Elf, you and me both know that ain't worth a piece more than 3 gold, right? So let's not pretend. You don't have to agree to it, but that's what I'll pay for it.
Alright, so let's wait till 11 to get the Mages Guild. Actually, in this case, I can just rest for regeneration.
It's been too long since you stated your need to kill as a vampire. You are unable to regain your strength.
Oh. Alright, I kind of want to discover how this all works, but I am going to need to figure out how I can get. Alright, let's take a look at the wiki. Oh, okay, apparently you just kill people. Alright, before we go any further, let's see if I can find. Yeah, this is complicated mechanically. Nope. I just killed a guy. Alright, sorry. This is, So I'm not a vampire yet. Kinda curious what this does to my reputation. So what we're gonna do now is start by going to the Mages Guild and finding the closest tavern. Get some decent speed on this at least. Also, I need to make sure this thing isn't called dirty. I will accept the beaver announcement.
That'll be 3 gold pieces. You've bartered down to that.
Well, that was quick. Alright, I think I'm going to fork the playthrough just in case I get caught in something, so... I do have a book on curing vampirism apparently, but...
Incense and soft music soothe your nerves as you cross the threshold. Each item in this shop is carefully mounted and displayed, and not the slightest defect can be detected on any item within. My services are reserved for members.
Oh. Alright, everybody thinks I'm someone different.
Yes, you are worthy to join the Mages Guild as an apprentice. You can use the Spellmaker and get training on any of the guild skills. Later, you will become eligible to use the library, buy magical items, and even make your own. Are you interested in joining?
Yes.
Then henceforth you will be known as Caius, apprentice of the Mages Guild. It will take patience and hard effort to gain access to all the guild offers, my child, but I can now give you access to our trainers and our Spellmaker. Too much power in too little time has destroyed many a man and woman. The Mages Guild is nothing if not conscientious. You and the trainer practice for 3 hours. The trainer tells you to reflect on what you've learned and see if you can put it to good use.
Right, so I don't have access to any of these services now. This is going to change my approach to a few things. Honestly, though, being a vampire gives me a certain degree of plausible deniability if I'm going to assassinate the King of Wayrest. Alright. So next up, I want to see if there's a place where I can sell a bunch of this stuff. Also, see what the deal is with this vampirism book.
How I became a vampire. My first kill, while it might indeed horrify the reader that my first victim was a friend of the mortal I used to be.
Haha, I'm in a different region.
It is my understanding that they are not uncommon first kills. I left the snow white corpse in the alley and ran to the only place I felt perversely safe, the mausoleum. For the first couple of days of my undeath, I starved myself while I considered my fate. I relearned what I was capable of doing. I found that I was stronger, faster, tougher, and more agile than before. I had powers that as a knight I had only seen powerful mages wield. Later, I discovered additional abilities, such as total immunity to disease, helpful when descending on a plague-stricken city like Jackal. I also found my weaknesses. I could no longer stand the light of the sun,
Which is why we're taking damage.
exposure to it for longer than a few seconds burned me terribly. It also pained me to enter temples and other places of worship. The worst effect, of course, had to be my bloodlust. If I did not kill a warm-blooded creature once a night and drink its blood, my hunger would gnaw at me, and my wounds I suffered would not heal, no matter how much I rested. Is this the moment for me to admit that there was a time that I loved being a blood-sucking creature of the night? It is not impossible to live only at night, merely occasionally inconvenient. I wouldn't have to kill humans every night, merely warm-blooded creatures. Orcs have a delicious, rich, brothy blood. Rats are a little sweet for the only meal of the night. Werewolves are a real treat, almost decadent, the tincture between human and beast, a real gourmet's delight. About a month after I died, I was having the best time of my life. One night I received a letter from someone who said he was family. Curious, I went to visit him at his tavern, and was told about the tribe of vampires to which I belonged, the Montalion. In return for me performing certain duties for my family, the man at the inn would train me in my vampiric abilities and skills. Though I never got very much detail, I surmised that the two differences between the different vampire clans is geography and powers. Montalion alone have a gift for teleportation, but the other 8 have powers of their own. My mentor, that is the title that he used, would congratulate me after each mission I performed, and came to trust me more and more. If asked, he would tell me about the Montalion's newest alliances, who they were manipulating, who they were stalking. It was then that I started to become frightened at last. They, and all their rival clans, were draining the blood of Tamriel itself. I panicked. I had to find a cure, but nowhere I could find any book or rumor suggesting that vampirism is anything but permanent, so I resolved to kill myself, but I wanted to bring the Montalion down with me. I joined the guilds that they opposed and failed any mission given to me spectacularly. I thought my mentor would turn against me, but he only became quieter, less forthcoming with information. Never violent. He was not concerned. He had probably seen vampires like me before. Here's why he never attacked me. Immortals can afford to be eternally patient. At last he refused to give me any further missions. He wouldn't even talk to me, but he never left his tavern. I could come and go, and he'd watch, but never talk. That's when I got another letter. There are several of us, you see, former vampires who know what to look for. We're patient too. We learned it in our own life. We watch and listen, and anonymously contact the vampires we know wish to end the curse. Ending the curse is possible, but only just. It is very dangerous, but when you are cursed, the only real danger is no escape.
So it sounds like I need to wait. Alright, first things first, let's go to the Palace of Wayrest and see what we can do. Sorry guys, I just got a message. Alright. Lord Woodborn and Princess Elisana.
I have a friend, a potential ally, who is in need of discreet assistance. It's a relatively simple salvage operation, one for which my friend would happily pay very handsomely and would greatly appreciate. I will need it to be accomplished very soon, within 13 days. I'll go into detail if you're interested.
Sure.
Excellent. I knew you'd help. Now then, my friend is Agristair Buckingfield of Arkwold Court. He has lost a gem, a sapphire, and my spies have tracked it down to Woodwing's Hold, of all places. Agristair Buckingfield needs the stone because he borrowed it from a third party. If it's not in his hands in 13 days, well, there will be some considerable trouble. Furthermore, the persons who now possess the stone will, according to my spy, be vacating Woodwing's Hold any day now. Obviously, you'd best leave immediately and get to Arkwold Court in 13 days with the sapphire. Good luck, Caius. Make me proud. Make me proud.
Not exactly what I was planning to do, but... Apparently I don't get to talk to her. Well, it was worth a try. Oh, God. this with my, like... Alright, now we can work on this. So it says a castle in the wilderness, so I'm curious. I am a little interested in the coven. A lot of graves. See the target I should be looking for, though. Alright, here's one thing I'm gonna try. Woodbourne Hall. Interesting. Alright, we'll try that after. Woodwings Hold. Well, the good news is, other than that first murder, we shouldn't need to kill innocents to eat. Apparently I can still drown as a vampire, though. I wonder if the bag of Daggerfall is gonna give me my money back. keeping a raise skill just because I hit the wrong button. I sometimes keep it if I'm gonna lose progress, but I try not to do that out of hand. Oh my god. Apparently they're really good at what they do. Well, that was a little more straightforward. I just want to find the gem, though. Not again. Sorry for the noise. These guys are tough. And no gem. Let's get rid of the dwarven dagger then. That's why we save. Sorry for the silence, I'm just really not sure what to say with all of this. In this case, I'm going to do a precautionary heal. This is really more about having it available on a quick cast rather than getting the heal in. Cool. Okay. Gotta figure out the next place where I haven't been yet. Obviously, we heard a vampire. I wonder if I can get let down. Nope. Just want to see what I'm up against. Yeah, we've already explored all of this. Well, now we know where the vampire is. Normally, if you click on one of the chains, it, cool. It'll let you down slowly, but not so lucky here. And we've already explored this. Alright, well, as is my way. Well, I definitely want that.
You found the sapphire.
Alright, as is usual, actually, I was just gonna do recall, but I want want to see where I got it wrong. This feels like it's in the middle of nowhere. You know what, it's not worth it at this point, but just accept that I cheated and move on. There's clearly no point in me carrying that shield anymore. I wonder if this is all my... Nope, that can't be right because it's 34779. Alright, at this point I think we'll head straight to the location that we need. It's going to be very inconvenient to try and find this location when nobody's on the streets. Don't mind me, just a vampire scoping out the houses. East. All right. Well, it's still going to be a bit of a dilemma. Oh, this is welcome.
It's not a big market for those, but I can sell it. I'll give you 23,213 gold pieces, a perfectly fair price.
My encumbrance is still pretty high, probably because of the gold.
My name's Dunval Hearthford. I have to get out of Arkwold Court right away, and I want to hire you to guard me on my journey to Penbridge. I can pay 1,265 gold pieces.
Sure.
Blessings upon you, Caius. I travel light, so I'm ready to go. I know you don't work for free. Take me to the Copperhouse residence in Penbridge, and I'll pay you 1,265 gold when we get there.
Oh. I did want to ask him about the location, though. Drat.
Help! I have a warrant for the arrest of Dunval Hearthford in the name of Wayrest. I don't want you, just him. Turn him over and you can go free. Dunval Hearthford says, Ha! I hired this dark elf to protect me from this. Caius, are you going to turn me over?
If that will make the guard like me, yes. I just want to take a quick look at the outcome. You know what? That's stupid.
Dunval Hearthford is slain right before your eyes.
Cool. Although I am a little curious, I want to know what undependable counts like. Alright, well, it's an improvement. South. Alright, that's important information. Just trying to think if there's anything the Mage's Guild can do to try and turn me back. Southeast is not exactly the clearest direction. I feel like I've checked out a lot of these before. Yeah, we've almost certainly checked out some of these. Oh, thank God. All right.
Oh, Caius, I don't know you don't know how relieved I am that you found that sapphire. You don't even want to think about it if you hadn't. Here's the finest reward I can give you, a left pauldron. Please accept it with my sincere thanks.
Can I have the money instead? Alright. And on that note, like I said, I was gonna fork this just in case I wind up. I think what I need to do is I need to figure out a little bit about how the vampire mechanics work and to make sure that it's not gonna ruin the playthrough. If it doesn't, then I'm sticking with it. But if it causes other problems, then I gotta go back. But I'm going to commit to seriously trying to play through the change, because I did decide that I wanted to do that. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.